Let's ask ComRes's pollster Greig Baker. Good morning to you, Greig. In terms of this latest attempt to unsettle Gordon Brown, will it work?
Good morning, Francine. Well, it's been an interesting day, hasn't it? I remember looking back at some of our figures last year, and the general public perceive the Labour Party to be more split at the moment under Brown than they remember the Conservatives being under John Major, which is quite a startling finding. And the past 24 hours certainly wouldn't have done anything to dispel that. But as far as a coup attempt goes, it was singularly unsuccessful. The two former cabinet ministers who pushed forward the idea of a secret ballot received very little, if no support at all, from the cabinet or the Parliamentary Labour Party. And although it wasn't perhaps put down with a great deal of enthusiasm by people like Peter Mandelson, it was still put down. So Gordon Brown seems to be safe for the moment.
But, Greig, what's the actual logic behind this action? I mean, how damaging is it for Brown and for Labour? Because it just shows, yet another time, a very divided party.
Sure. Well, we've got some research going into the field over the next week or so that's going to be looking at voting intentions. So it'll be interesting to see those figures once they come back to see what kind of impact this has had. It could, in fact, go one of two ways. The most obvious chance is that this appearance of division is going to undermine Labour's perceptions amongst the general public. The flip side, though, is that because it was such an unsuccessful coup attempt, the simple name recognition of seeing Brown defeating the rebels, facing down another challenge, could even theoretically play in his favour. We've yet to see. At the moment, it doesn't look good for Brown, though, and I'm sure he wasn't very happy yesterday.
How likely is it that Gordon Brown will actually step down before an election?
I think it's very unlikely indeed now. January really is the last chance for that to happen. And if it is to happen, it's really down to Brown to make that decision now. He would have to go because the Labour Party has a fairly complicated and convoluted process for changing leader. And ahead of the general election, which is most likely going to happen on 6th of May, there really isn't the time for that to happen now.
If he did step down, Greig, would it actually give Labour more of a chance of winning?
Well, it could do. I mean, normally in British politics, when a new leader takes over a political party, they have something of a honeymoon. Indeed, Gordon Brown did over the first summer that he was in charge. And again, looking at the figures that we've had over the past year, we can consistently see that Brown is a drag on his party's ticket, whereas the reverse is true of the Conservatives, where David Cameron tends to give them an electoral boost. So certainly up until Christmas of last year, if Labour had ditched Brown, it looks as if they would have been doing better in the polls in the run-up to the general election. I think it's possibly getting too late in the day to be able to do that for them, and they might have to stick with the horse they have.
Greig, what do your latest polls actually suggest? It seems that David Cameron has still failed to seal the deal. This is according to a poll right before Christmas. Sure.
I mean, one of the remaining challenges that the Conservative Party has is getting past this perception of being the party for the rich or the affluent. David Cameron's tried to detoxify their brand, if you like, to appeal to a wider audience. And to a great extent, he's been successful with that. But the Tory voting intention, the Tory support amongst the general public, is very much dependent on that perception of him as an individual rather than the party as a whole. As I say, he tends to drag up the ticket and give them a boost, whereas perceptions of the party itself haven't really changed. So there's a chance that that lead they have in the polls could be fragile.
Anything on who's best to take this country out of recession?
Well, I think most people tend to prefer Cameron over Brown in terms of economic competence, which always used to be Brown's strong suit. In terms of alternative leaders for the Labour Party, from some of our analysis, it's almost a case of, as I say, up until Christmas, it was almost a case of anyone but Brown or Harman would be better than what we have at the moment.